Very good. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 11th, 2023 School Committee. I'll call this meeting to order. And the first thing on our agenda, as usual, is approving today's agenda. And it's my understanding that we are removing the approval of minutes from today's agenda, so we'll eliminate item 9. Any other changes or deletions?
The chair, in item 6, where you're doing the second readings, one of them was left off the agenda. It's in your packet, however. DGA authorized signatures. It's one of the ones you had a first reading on last time, and it's in the packet for tonight, but for some reason it's just not on the agenda.
Okay, all right. So let's add that. Is that okay to add that in, Dr. Pavlicek? Since it was already
the same package we were dealing with last time. So.
Yes, exactly. Okay, very good. All right. Any other comments, changes? Okay, hearing none, we will move along to the superintendent's update. Pass it along to you, Superintendent Sheehan.
Thank you, Chair Rosemary. Good evening. First, under the superintendent's update would be discussion of the annual report and taking a vote. I would like to thank Stephanie O'Keefe for all of her hard work in coordinating this effort, in collecting reports from multiple sources throughout the district and putting it all together for us. We had many who were who edited and who oversaw this report. I think that at this time you may want to discuss a vote, or do you want to hold on that?
Why don't we make a motion, and then if anyone has any comments or discussion, we can take it from there. I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-22 annual report. Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. So any comments or questions about the report? No. Okay, hearing none.
Sorry, I was just
Mhm.
going to say I thought it was very well done and very thorough. I don't recall ever seeing one that was so detailed.
Yeah, Member Varghese.
I wanted to say the same thing as Member White. It was actually really nice for me as a first-time school committee member to see a snapshot of all the different schools and all the initiatives that are happening. And I think it's great. Is this something that will be published? Like, is it available to the community? Because I think it's really informative and very well done.
Yes, we submit it to the town and it will be published.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine it'll be posted on our website as well, right?
Yes, we will post it on the website.
Yeah, it really is a pleasure to look back on all that has been accomplished in that last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a busy couple of years, and that already feels like a while ago. Yeah, thank you to everyone who worked on this, and really very much appreciate all the work that went into it. So if there are no other comments or questions, I'll move forward with the motion, do a roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Member Varghese?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Dr. Miranda?
Yes.
And Chair Rosemary, yes. Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have submitted a draft of a school calendar for the 2023-2024 school year. And we submitted proposed dates for additional early release days as opposed to the late start days. We will talk about that in just a minute. Dr. McKinney is going to talk about some of the feedback that we received from staff. We also made a change at the bottom for religious and cultural holidays. We added Christmas, December 25th, to that list. And I wanted to let you know, in case you didn't see it, but we did forward to you an email from a parent who provided some history for Columbus Day. He noted that Columbus Day is still a federal holiday and a Massachusetts holiday. This parent also included other districts that have maintained Columbus Day on their school calendars. So that is something that we wanted to share with you in consideration of restoring Columbus Day to the school calendar. And at this time, I think I'll turn it over to Dr. McKinney just to share some of the feedback on our professional development late start days.
Thank you, Superintendent Sheehan. Just looking at some of the feedback we've collected, I believe this was the first year we had those for late start days. Some of the themes from the teachers, voicing some of the challenges at the secondary level with the scheduling and trying to condense it, coming in later. And like anything new, some folks like it at the elementary level, coming in fresh and having an opportunity to collaborate together as opposed to the end of the day, but it certainly posed a challenge for our parents and families, particularly with having one early on in September. Some of the other feedback we've collected was around they appreciate collaboration time, being together, looking at data, sharing best practices, differentiating some of the content, as well as some of the professional development we've shared related to our strategic plan on UDL and using data, trauma-sensitive schools, social-emotional learning. So with all that, we had a conversation around utilization of those late start days, and we'd still like to provide teachers the opportunity to come together for that additional 8 hours. But given that the history and the consistency of these early release days seem to be something the community is familiar with, we added additional early release days that would be something of consistency and continuity for all our constituents, the students, the parents, and the teachers, to know that over the course of the year, we'll have those release times, both for collaboration time, some PD time, but also some conference time. So it's not as choppy, and it's not, is it a late start day? Is it an early release day? It'll be a little more consistent, and we tried to strategically place those around times where it would work, we believe, for all three groups, and try to still keep as many weeks of instruction as possible and avoid some of the high traffic, high testing areas that happen during the school year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Sheehan, should we move on to discuss this, or does that conclude your presentation for us? Or do you have
I do have some happenings and district updates.
Mhm.
If you'd like me to complete those, I don't know if you would like to discuss now, and I can go to happenings. That's up to you, Chair Rosemarin.
Yeah, let's talk about the calendar a little bit now, if we could, and then we'll come back about the happenings in the district, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Dr. Carroll, I see your hand is up.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the way that I can tell you've incorporated feedback in revising or, presenting a draft calendar for this coming year. I know I have also heard about the concerns regarding the late starts, so I really appreciate that you heard that, especially considering there was mixed feedback from the educators about that. I also wanted to point out, in adding more early release days, I appreciate that it looks like 4 of them are on Friday afternoons, which is another thing I've heard from families, that would potentially make it less challenging than having them in the middle of the week. So thank you for that. I have 2 questions. One is just regarding early release. I just wanted to share that actually a teacher had mentioned to me, or basically asked what I thought about the term early release, and wondered why, or could we have something more like early dismissal? And the perspective there, which I tend to agree with actually, is that early release does connote some like something like you want to be released from something, as if like you're being released from something you didn't want to be doing. And we all know that we want our students and teachers to love school, and the fact that they're being dismissed early might be good in some ways, especially if they have rich PD opportunities. But anyway, so I just offer that for consideration. Would we consider switching it to early dismissal days, which strikes me as a more neutral term? And again, this was a direct question from a teacher who raised that to me. I thought that was sort of interesting to think about. The other question I do have in looking at the proposed calendar relates back to another piece of feedback that I had received from the community regarding election day. And I know that it's a common practice in many other districts to have a PD day with teachers only on election day. That had been raised as a safety concern from a parent in particular at the Tucker, where we all know space is very tight. And so when we introduce voting into the school building, surrounding streets and neighborhood with a lot of traffic coming and going, I think a reasonable person would, wonder about security measures. I know that Superintendent Sheehan, you had responded on that, and that there, of course, are measures in place to ensure that students are safe, when we have members of the public coming and going throughout the day on election day. But even still, considering that several of our school buildings, not all, are polling places, I was just wondering, is there a reason why we're not considering having a professional development day on election day, which would just minimize traffic and perhaps help members of the community feel less worried about security concerns on that day? Just putting that out there in case it had been considered and there was a reason why we're not doing that, or just looking to see, there is a PD day currently November 1st. Like, is there any way that could be November 7th instead? Just interested if there's any thoughts on that. Thanks.
We did have some discussion around, I think, years where there were sort of, big elections, I guess is more of the discussion that we had around that. And then we considered in the spring that we do have some town elections. But certainly we can revisit the November date.
And
Very
Dr.
happy to
McKinney,
do that.
Dr. McKinney, I see your hand is up, and you have further.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Carroll. I missed that in my comments, but that March date, I believe, is on the election day. Dr.
That is the local
Pavlicek.
one, Dr.
Dr.
McKinney.
Pavlicek. Oh, it's not? Let's
No.
have Dr. Pavlicek chime in. I think we're waiting to hear back confirmation. Is that correct?
No, there is no election day in November in 2023 because it's an odd year and there are no elections. I checked with the town clerk today. The March 5th, however, Professional Development Day, is the presidential primary for 2024. Sad it is to think about that already, but that's when the presidential primary is. So we actually have put a full day,
Great.
Professional Development Day on an election day. It's just not the one you expected.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Just so you're all familiar with the process around calendars. This is our first conversation about the calendar. It usually comes as a draft from central office with their recommendations. We can discuss these items and then we'll bring it back to a subsequent meeting for an actual vote. So we won't take a vote today, but we're just discussing the questions that we might have. Member Varghese.
I just want to clarify, we're not proposing doing late starts for the next calendar, right? Is that what I'm understanding? Okay. And then I'm good with changing it to early dismissal day. I think that's a nice recommendation. And I did see the email that Superintendent Sheehan mentioned, and I mean, could we come to some sort of compromise and do a combination of the two, or how would the other members feel about that?
Yeah, I don't know and you're talking about the Columbus Day and
Yes.
Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yes.
Mhm. One thing that we did last year with some of these calendar deliberations is we referred it back to policy subcommittee for discussion and to bring a recommendation back to the full school committee. So I hate to put Dr. Carroll on the spot, but I mean, that would be one possibility, is to refer that discussion to policy if we indeed want to do that. But happy to entertain other people's thoughts.
Oh, I agree. If the policy subcommittee, I'm sorry, I didn't realize Dr. Miranda had her hand up. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, I think the policy subcommittee, if there is a recommendation to do anything different or to maintain what we have, I'd be happy to attend that policy subcommittee myself, so that we can have the opportunity to talk through some of the rationale behind the change, as well as what the current thinking is nationally. It's nice that we have parents that are willing to share their views. And I also realized that there were many people who shared their views, which allowed us to make that change. So making sure that we have multiple voices at the table, I think is extraordinarily helpful in these types of discussions. So if Dr. Carroll is willing to entertain that on the policy subcommittee, I'd be happy to attend too.
Thank you, Member Ross Denny. Dr. Miranda?
I would agree with Member Ross Denny that I think this would require a lengthier conversation. I do think it's important to hear from various perspectives, and I wouldn't be ready to sort of move to make a compromise at this particular point, because I would love for us to have the conversation. So I do think that if Dr. Carroll is willing to take it to the policy committee, I too would volunteer to attend if I can, or if not, support in any way that I can.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And a meeting like that, we could cross post with a school committee meeting. So any school committee member that wants to attend would be able to, if we were to do that. Dr. Carroll?
Sure. I am happy to have this be on a policy committee agenda, subcommittee agenda, I should say. I agree with my colleagues who've already spoken that this would be something important to, consider carefully and think about in an inclusive way, which, of course, does include considering the perspective of the member of the community who has raised this concern to us now. I can say personally at this point in time, I'm in favor of Indigenous Peoples Day. But I'm open to learning more about the possibility of having a joint designation. So yes, but I do have a question regarding timing. So we have a policy subcommittee meeting next week, is the next regularly scheduled one on the 17th. We have a full agenda for that already. So probably the soonest that we would be able to bring this to the policy subcommittee would be February. And I guess I'm just wondering, what is the timing where we would need to sort this out at the policy level in order to, is this the kind of thing that we could continue the conversation, as needed over the next couple of months and update the calendar, when that discussion reaches a conclusion? Even if I understand we may have to move forward with approving the calendar otherwise on a shorter timeline. Would that be okay with people? Because I frankly don't see us being able to expedite this particular conversation like within the next few weeks, just given the timing of our meetings.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think it's my understanding from our calendar discussions in previous years that the biggest concern is the beginning date of school and the end date, and obviously all the things in between. But in terms of planning, that we'd want to get those dates out to our community as early as we can. But we've definitely had discussions about the calendar that have gone into February. And, I agree that this could take more than one conversation, but we'd want to move things along as quickly as we could. But thank you, Dr. Carroll, for being willing to do that, and certainly understand that the meeting for next week is already full. And so, yeah, if it's a way to plan the February meeting on the early side of February, that would be great.
Okay, I'll look at that. I don't know off the top of my head when it's scheduled for as of now, but I will also just make sure, since Superintendent Sheehan, you're here, Dr. McKinney, would definitely want to make sure that Claire Galloway Jones could be included in that conversation, given her expertise. So would that be all right as well to invite her to that?
Oh, are you asking me?
I'm just making sure that that's
Member
fine.
Carol, I'm sorry.
Reach out to her.
We will do that. I'll make a note of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, and I'd also just like to remind people about our process last year. Similarly, went back to policy subcommittee when we were talking about recognition of a number of holidays that weren't on the calendar, and whether we in fact wanted those to be days off from school and the like. And what we determined at that time was to add that section that you see on the bottom of this calendar that includes, important religious and cultural holidays that are happening during the year. We did have a couple of things. We did have on the last calendar a statement at the bottom that talked about, although these holidays do not have a day off, that staff are encouraged to do everything they can to accommodate the students and families' observances of these holidays, or something along those lines, which I think would be nice to include that on the bottom of our calendar if we can, if we have room. I know how hard this is to format this all. One other item that I think we should add is Eid al-Adha. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but in 2024, that falls on June 17th. So it's before school lets out. This year it's on June 29th, so it's during the summer, so we didn't have it on the calendar, but it's a holiday that moves around, and I think we should include that in that list down below with June 17th. Yeah, and just want to thank Charlene Roach also for all her efforts in the challenge of formatting this calendar. She moved back to our previous format just because it was more workable. But I think we're managing to include all the components that we had before. Dr. Pavlicek?
Just to comment on what was said before, the next policy subcommittee after next week is February 14th.
Ah, okay. So will that be soon enough in terms of what the schools need in terms of scheduling for us to make a decision sometime after February 14th?
I believe so, because in the past, if we have been on the later side with the calendars, we get an occasional call from parents who want to plan a vacation a year in advance, or we do get calls, what is the last day of school, but we're able to give that information.
Terrific. And one other comment I just wanted to make too is going through this calendar this year, it is reminding me of the thoughtful contributions of a community member, Dr. Mona Abozina, who came and spoke to us about how a calendar really fosters a feeling of inclusion and belonging by having the holidays named on our calendars. And even though it may not be a day off, it's still an opportunity for everyone in the community to be aware of these holidays and to learn about them and support those who are celebrating. Dr. Miranda?
Yes, and to that point, I believe Yom Kippur is not included as one of the holidays.
I think it's a day off.
Is it? It's just not listed, I think, to your point.
Where is it? Yeah, it's listed under September 25th, no school, Yom Kippur. So yeah, it's interesting. You make a good point though about what are we
doesn't make the list below,
including on the bottom. Yeah, if it's on the calendar up above, I guess that it's that's an interesting call. But we'll pass that back and we can. I don't know that it needs to be recognized.
It's there.
Twice.
Listed is October 5th. Are you saying there's 2 dates? Is that right?
It's
on the bottom, it says October 5th.
For Yom Kippur?
Yeah, right under no school and offices closed. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong year, but it says September.
Yeah, you're probably looking at
October
the last year's calendar, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I opened up the wrong, but that's the file I got. Okay, I see it. It's in comparison. I see now.
Yeah, she sent both. So Charlene sent both of them so we can refer. Yeah, it's not listed at the bottom, but yeah, I just think there's space is so short. I think as long as it's mentioned somewhere on the calendar, either as an actual day off, like for instance, is a Good Friday.
It's the same. It's a space saving thing. Like on the one from this year, they're listed in both places. They're listed up above if it's a day off. Like, I think that seems to be, like MLK Junior Day is only listed in the body of the calendar because that's where it's a day off. It's not, I suppose that's not a religious or cultural holiday, but Good Friday is in that same category.
Right.
As you mentioned.
Right. So, yeah.
So it would be a question of adding both Yom Kippur and Good Friday.
Yeah.
To the list below, which are look like the two cultural and religious holidays that are days off from school.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, I know space is tight and it gets to be a small enough font that nobody can read it. That's a challenge here.
I do want to reiterate what you said, Chair Rosemarin, and thank you for bringing it up. I do think it's important to find space for that statement that had been added last year, which was added based on that important feedback. So I would really hate to see that go away after just 1 year.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for raising that.
Sure.
We'll fit that in.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, I think we've got some great comments, and thank you, Dr. Carroll, for picking up the piece that will go to policy, and then we'll come back and discuss a final draft of the calendar sometime after February 14th. Okay. Very good. Okay, Superintendent Sheen, you want to go on with your district updates?
So I know the school committee chair, Rose Marin, will be providing an update on the superintendent search, but I did want to share that school visits went very smoothly last week and all seemed very enthusiastic about the candidates. So I just wanted to say that we look forward to welcoming Dr. Peter Burrows as our next superintendent. Our preschool and kindergarten teams have been very busy preparing for upcoming information nights. Preschool information night will take place virtually on Thursday, January 12th. Families may find the link on the front page of the district website. I'm sure it will also be found in the blog as well. Preschool pre-registration will take place from Thursday, January 12th to Thursday, January 26th. If a preschool lottery is necessary, that will take place on Friday, January 27th. And we're looking forward to kindergarten information night, and that's going to be held on Thursday, January 26th. This event will be in person at Milton High School. And just to give you an update on our numbers of families who are pre-registering for kindergarten, as of today, which is day 42, we have 263 families who have pre-registered their children for the next school year in kindergarten. Just compared to last year, as of this day, we had 293 families who had completed the pre-registration questionnaire. We don't really see a significant change in those numbers, but we watch them carefully so that we're able to plan for the next year, plan for our programs. So we'd just like to remind families that there is no school on January 16th. It is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. On January 17th, we will be having a late start professional development morning. The PD is for teachers on topics that we're continuing throughout the school year, on universal design for learning, data analysis, calm classroom, and collaborative time. On January 18th, we will hold our next school committee meeting at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And on January 19th and 20th at 7 p.m. and January 21st at 2 p.m. in the Pierce Auditorium, the Pierce Players will be performing its production of State Fair. So we're looking forward to this production and hope that members of the Milton community will take advantage of this. And let's see, on January 25th, 2023 at 7 p.m., the Milton School Committee will be hosting another forum. The topic of this forum will be on equity. It is one of the pillars of our strategic plan. This will be a hybrid meeting with a link to follow, and it will be held at the Council on Aging. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Sheehan. Next on our agenda is Citizen Speak. It's an opportunity for folks to share their thoughts with us. We have 15 minutes set aside. And if there are people in our viewing audience who would like to speak, you can raise your hand in the raise hand function, and we will promote you so that we can hear what you have to say.
There are currently no hands raised.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so we will move on then. Just find my agenda. Is Chair's report. So I just wanted to provide an update on the superintendent search. And just wanted to say I'm pleased to announce the news that Dr. Peter Burrows has accepted our offer of the position of superintendent of Milton Public Schools, subject to successful contract negotiations. Following school visits and public interviews with our 3 finalists on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, hearing substantial community feedback and holding a discussion and vote in open session on Friday, January 6th, the school committee voted unanimously to appoint Dr. Burrows. And if folks in our viewing audience are interested, they can view the interviews on Milton Access TV's website and their on-demand video on-demand section of their website. And I just want to make some give some thanks to those who were involved in the process. Thanks to the screening committee for their efforts, or a group of 11 members of the screening committee, for their efforts in screening 19 applicants, coming up with questions and interviewing 7 of those applicants, and narrowing down the search to 3 finalists that were recommended to the school committee. We had a number of opportunities for community input into our superintendent search process. Many people attended our focus groups and responded to our survey about our district's leadership needs. Many people attended our candidate receptions at our schools last week, and many watched our interviews last Wednesday. And we encourage the Milton Public Schools community to email us to express their opinions and share their advice. And we'd like to thank everyone who took part in this important effort. We received many thoughtful emails that reflected serious and heartfelt consideration by those who took the time to write. And it reinforced for us what an important decision this is for our entire community, and how engaged and what a caring community Milton is. So we feel lucky to be part of this community. We were also lucky to have 3 very strong finalists, and we want to thank Dr. Peter Cushing and Ms. Nan Murphy for their interest in our district. And the school committee wishes both Dr. Cushing and Ms. Murphy much success in their future endeavors. A little bit about Dr. Burrows, his proven leadership as a superintendent for a decade and in Vermont, and his exceptional change management skills were important factors in our decision. Dr. Burrows began his career teaching at a community college, taught English in Japan, South Korea, and Mexico, and was a teacher, assistant principal, and principal in Eugene, Oregon, before taking his current job as superintendent of the Addison Central School District based in Middlebury, Vermont. Dr. Burrows received his bachelor's degree in English from the University of Oregon, a master's degree in teaching from the School of International Training, and a doctorate in educational leadership from the University of Oregon. We're also grateful to our acting superintendent, Janet Sheehan, who has ably served as interim superintendent since July 2022. And we're working with central office administrators to finalize the leadership plan through the end of this school year. Thanks to so many staff members and community members who took the time to meet the candidates, watch the interviews, send us your thoughts, and your input was invaluable to this process. And we very much appreciate the involvement in this process of the whole community and recognize that the strength of Milton Public Schools lies in our exceptional and dedicated staff and engaged community that cares. So thank you, and we're looking forward to concluding our negotiations with Dr. Burrows and sharing that news as soon as possible. So let me just see, next on our agenda, we have a policy subcommittee. I'll turn it over to Dr. Carroll.
Thanks so much. So our only item under policy tonight is this second readings for this set of fiscal policies. We did the first reading of these policies at December 21st meeting. And let's see, I'll just quickly review the changes that have been proposed, and we'll be able to do the second reading tonight. Policy DBC, and these are the updates and recommendations from Dr. Pavlicek. Thank you again so much for all your time and work to analyze the recommendations we had received from MASC on this number of fiscal policies. On policy DBC, the budget deadlines and schedules policy, the change there was that we don't currently have an MPS policy on this topic, and so we are recommended to adopt this policy and just change the dates to agree with our town bylaws and to reflect our language of select board in Milton. So those were technical changes. To adopt policy DEC, federal funds supplement, not supplant policy. We do not currently have a policy, so that was the recommendation to accept this update from MASC. The next one, policy DGA. The recommendation on that was just to keep the language of town. So again, these are minor edits to the recommendations sent by MASC. That was the same recommendation under DH, the bonded employees and officers policy. Dr. Pavlicek recommended that we adopt DI as is, the fiscal accounting and reporting policy. Same with DIE on audits. Our policy is out of date currently. Same on DJ purchasing policy. Our current policy is out of date. And again, with DJE, our procurement policy, to adopt MASC's recommendations because our current policy is out of date. Policy DK on payment procedures. The recommendation from Dr. Pavlicek was just to add at least monthly lists of bills, to change municipal auditor to town accountant to be in line with our language in Milton, and also municipal treasurer to town treasurer. Finally, on DKC, the expense reimbursements policy was recommended to adopt that as is. So I'd like to make a motion to approve a second reading of this set of policies in our packet. And if there's a second, we can open it up to any questions or comments.
A second.
A second.
Okay, thank you, Member Ross-Denny. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of these? Okay, in that case, we'll do a roll call vote. Member Varghese?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Member Ross-Denny?
Yes.
Chair Rosemarin?
Yes.
Dr. Miranda?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you again, Dr. Pavlicek. And that concludes policy for tonight.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Carroll. And next we have our finance subcommittee report, and turn that over to Member White.
Okay, the finance subcommittee met yesterday morning with the leadership team, and we were also joined by member Carol. And we are presenting to the school committee, to the full school committee tonight, the preliminary fiscal year 2024 Milton Public School budget that we will be presenting to the warrant committee. The discussion continued with our leadership team on the budget, and the changes are being made on a regular basis as our needs change. And as everyone here is aware, our school population has grown and continues to grow. The pandemic's impact on student learning and social emotional well-being, as well as an increased population of students with special needs, is growing. And the district has significant needs, and this budget request reflects our needs. So I'm going to turn this over to Glenn Pavlicek, Dr. Pavlicek, to walk us through a PowerPoint that he developed that speaks to our request, our rollover budget, the ARPA funds, and additional positions that we're asking for. So take it away, Dr. Pavlicek.
If I could ask Milton Access TV to make me a co-host, I can't share my screen currently.
Yes, one moment. You should be a co-host now.
Can people see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, unlike last time, if I change the screen, can people see a change?
It looks the same.
Yep,
Can you
there you go.
see, as unfortunately, for whatever reason, Zoom doesn't like you to do presentations. It wants you to look at it in this mode. But we'll go ahead anyway. I want to begin by this slide, which we've seen before. In order to look at the budget for next year, it helps to look at it from more than the general fund perspective. This year, if you look at what we have with general fund plus ARPA funds for this year, it's $59.6 million to do exactly what we're doing right now. Same staff, no layoffs, no increased staff. It would cost $61.6 million, or about a 3.35% increase, which is not unreasonable in this climate for maintaining a program. The problem is, of course, that with a decrease of roughly $1 million in our ARPA funding for this year, we've hit this ARPA cliff. So whereas, it's a $2 million increase in the overall cost, because ARPA is going down by $1 million, it's really a $3 million increase from the general fund. So that's one of the reasons I like to look at things beyond the general fund, because it looks like a 5% increase to the general fund, but it's really only a 3.3% increase in the budget. And this ARPA cliff is our biggest hurdle for this year. So again, that $61 million request on the general fund is this year's appropriation. It's going to cost us roughly $2 million to roll over the staff that are on the general fund to account for inflation and so forth, which actually is a relatively low figure, as some of you will remember from year to year. We've been a little below, a little above over the last few years, but that's the right ballpark. But we have that roughly $1 million in ARPA money that we have to make up. Just to remind everybody, that ARPA money is funding a variety of positions, and basically, were we not to maintain that funding, some of these positions would have to be cut. Preschool coordinator, the 504 team chair, which deals with students who are not on individual ed plans, but have American for Disabilities Act accommodations. One of the elementary reading specialists, a math support teacher at the high school. Our kindergarten aides were made full-time this year from 0.8 in the past. 2 part-time nurses, 2 preschool teachers, 3 special education aides are preschool aides, and 2 of our BCBAs. So these are all the people who would be, or equivalent positions would be at risk were we not to get ARPA funding. So our principal goal is, of course, to maintain that funding, maintain our positions. That isn't to say that we have needs, don't have needs beyond that. There are lots of things going on in the system that we need to, that we have identified and need to deal with, and to put some of those out there. This is where it's changed from the last time we've seen it. We've, as an administration, looked very closely at the needs to try to prioritize the ones of really major importance. So you'll see that in these next few slides, we're actually identifying fewer things than we did before the holidays. This is the same, however. Current IEPs necessitate that we hire another speech therapist and half-time OT and PT. The staff we have currently cannot meet the needs. We have more people coming on with IEPs. We are contracting a lot of these services now to the extent that our staff can't do it. We need to hire staff to do it. It's certainly more cost effective than contracting it out. The other piece that is going to be required for us is two pieces here. Additional class at Collegot due to increased enrollment. This is an issue with the children on the autism spectrum, and it actually ties back to the space issues. Technically, students in the preschool in this program could have 12 students in a classroom. Unfortunately, they're not in classrooms. They're in the short classrooms. They're in converted other spaces. And so we currently have a maximum enrollment of 9 in those classrooms, and they're full. And we have 2 preschoolers moving up, and we have a couple that are out of district we'd like to bring back. So we need another preschool autism spectrum classroom. And if we don't do it, I mentioned at the bottom, some of those students who are moving up from preschool will probably have to go out of district, and the cost will exceed easily the cost of doing this. So we really need to do this. It's going to be a challenge to find a space. We've been looking at, places all over the district. It has to be in an elementary school classroom because these children need access to other children. It's and everything, as you know, if you walk through the buildings, has been sufficiently carved up, but it is something we absolutely need to do. Secondly, is sort of related, as this group of students who started out in our NEC program is now moving into the high school, we need an additional teacher at the high school who is ABA certified and can deal with, again, the children who are now at high school from our original autism spectrum classes. So again, these are needs. We have to do these various positions. The cost of not doing them will be, greater than the cost of doing them. In other needs, and these aren't at this point from the rest of from here on out, these are not any particular order, and they're also not necessarily legally mandated, but these are needs we see in the district that need to be addressed, if not now, very soon. The intensive learning classroom at Tucker, we've mentioned before, it's to deal with students who are may not be on individualized ed plans yet, but very likely could be because of learning loss. And we're trying to target them young as a preschool, kindergarten age, so that we make up any lost learning, kindergarten, maybe first grade age. So we make up lost learning so they don't go into the special education program, and we try to mainstream them as best as possible. The out-of-district coordinator, we have, as I said before, we have had 2.3 FTE out-of-district coordinators. We had to move one of them into a team chair position, so the special ed director and assistant director have been doing it, filling in that other bit. But realistically, with now 54 students out of districts and having to go site visits and have to do all the IEP meetings and evaluations at those places, we really need to increase this to a full-time position. This is again one you saw before from our DEI director. She's looking to have an equity coach to help deal with some of the issues around the school system and help with teacher training and so forth. Stipends for 6 of teachers, 1 at each school, to sort of be the point people for this, and some money for PD memberships and conferences. At the elementary school, again, this is one you saw before. We have the 2 math interventionists who are currently on grant funding. We want to add one that's actually on regular funding, partially to protect the position, but also the fact is that we would like to service more students than we currently service. The 2 have full caseloads. They're servicing the highest need students. We feel there are other students who don't quite make the threshold to be serviced by the limited staff we have, but who deserve some extra support. And so we'd like to add the extra interventionist to deal with that. At the middle school, this is different from what you saw before. Originally, we had talked about another team at the 6th grade, then a half team at the 6th grade. What we're looking actually now is, in talking with the middle school principal, we're looking at targeting it a bit more and looking at a grade 6 ELA support teacher. So rather than trying to reduce the size of all the classes, we have some math support in grade 6. We don't have that kind of targeted reading support. And so rather than try to build in 4 teachers or 2 teachers, we're looking at 1 teacher there to help with some of the struggling learning loss with reading in the 6th grade. And we had talked about exploratory teachers. We, currently at the middle school have 70 sections that are in excess of 25 students. Those are large classes at middle school. Technology is the one where we have the most demand and the least capacity, most excess demand, if you will. So we would target that as the most important exploratory teacher at the middle school. I left at the bottom for the future needs. We will need more exploratory teachers. 1 teacher is not going to do it, but in the interest of prioritizing and targeting, we decided that technology was the primary focus. Again, at the high school, looking at it whittled down a bit more from what you saw before. Again, we had a list of teachers that were really necessary at the high school, but we really want to center on the business career tech teacher. I mentioned yesterday at finance, 27 out of the 50 sections in this department are over 25 students, and that is actually low, that underrepresented number, because in this department you have wood shop, you have auto shop, and you have some of the cooking classes, which are capped at 24. So really, those classes, 10 of those classes that are under 50 are there because they have to be under 50 by safety guidelines. So you're looking at more like 27 out of 40 classes running over 25 students. So this is a heavily oversubscribed department. The other example we gave, that we have a teacher who's doing 4 AP economics classes. Well, that means that some of the introductory classes are not being offered. And of course, if you don't take the introductory classes, you will never get to the AP classes. So this is the department at the high school that was targeted as having the most need for another staff, other than the special education teacher we mentioned earlier. And then the final one was the technology request. As I say, with 5,000 devices, a director and 3 people, we had a larger department 20 years ago than we have now. And the change in technology is astronomical between then and now. So this is a real need. And as I said before, if it weren't for the class at the high school of students who are very good at repairing Chromebook screens and putting keys back in them and so forth, we would be in very serious trouble. So this is a real need. So just sort of in summary, your appropriation for this year is the 58 million. When you add on the cost of just maintaining where we are, you're looking at 61 million, or roughly $3 million ask, just under $3 million ask. All of the other pieces from the required sped cost down through the various different asks in the aggregate are another $1,000,001. We recognize the town's financial situation, and that, $4 million is an extreme ask, but it's important to lay out what the needs are, and really make the case for where, if not now, very shortly, we are going to need more staff and service. So I will end it there.
Thank you, Dr. Pavlicek. Any comments or questions from members? Okay, people ready to take a vote to approve the fiscal year 24 budget request to go to the warrant committee? And I have a second.
Second.
Okay. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Okay. Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Dr. Rosemarin, I just promoted you. Chair Rosemarin,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you for that. The next item is that we are requesting that we make a change in the substitute nurse rate. And again, just to give you a little bit of information, our current rate, which is $168 a day, is significantly lower than our neighboring districts. And we don't need substitutes all that often, but typically it's when one of our current nurses either is out sick or is at a professional conference. And so the finance subcommittee is recommending that we raise our substitute rate to $225 a day, which is the same rate as the city of Quincy offers and very similar to other neighboring districts. So I'd like to make a motion that we raise it to 225. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Chair Rosemarin,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay. And then I'd also like to make a motion to accept the second quarter report as presented. If anyone has any questions about that or any comments before we take a vote? Okay. Can I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Chair Rosemarin,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and myself. Thank you. And last but not least, we have two vendor warrants to approve tonight. Vendor warrant number 25, dated 1/5/23, in the amount of $635,901.75, and vendor warrant number 26, dated January 12th, 23, in the amount of $407,827.90. Can I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote for that. Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Chair Rosemarin,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right, thank you very much. We're done.
Okay, thank you, Member White. Next item on the agenda is school building presentation, and I've heard from Chair of the School Building Committee, Sean O'Rourke, who is still at the Warrant Committee tonight. Their meeting was at the same time as ours, and I told him I thought our meeting might go long, and maybe it'll work out, but it had their meeting is going long too. And so he's not available to come speak with us tonight, but he's there. It's important because the proposal for the article for the proposal of purchasing the Fontbonne Convent is on the February 13th warrant for a special town meeting, and that's really the priority for Sean's evening. Is to be there. He was there Monday night, and they discussed the issue for about 2 hours. And they did not take a vote that night. It's unclear whether they'll take a vote tonight. When he may have to go back again next week, but he needs to hang in there. He just emailed me his presentation, which I will forward on to you all. And I encourage you to take a look at it. And if you hold on 1 second. I just got a text from him. Oh, he's just got out. So let's see if he can jump on. Hold on 1 sec. Let's see if he's in the. He's at town hall and just trying to log in. Okay. He's just trying to find the link for the meeting. He'll be with us very shortly. Sorry about that.
I thought that was too good to be true to have our meeting of all time.
Yeah.
If he comes in on the public link, I can promote him, so he doesn't have to look for the panelist link.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, maybe if you can shoot that to him, Dr. Pavlicek, so he'll have one way or another. I don't know. I'm assuming that internet must be pretty good at town hall. So he can log in. Oh, there he goes. Yeah, he's in the attendees right now.
I just promoted him.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Hi, Sean. Oh, he's calling in from his cell. Oh, dear. Hmm.
Ada, if he's calling in from his cell, you might want to prepare the PowerPoint because he obviously won't be able to show it. So you can share it.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Sean.
All right. Perfect.
Hey,
Sorry about all that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you have somebody in the other room who can call you if they need you.
Yeah, I don't know. So we'll see.
Oh dear. Okay. Do you need us to share your presentation or are you able to do it from your computer?
No, I got it up now. So if you just give me 1 second, I'll pull it up.
All right.
You gotta enable me to share my screen. That's the only thing.
If Milton Access could make Sean a co-host.
Should be good to go now.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just let me know when it pops up.
Yep. I see it.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you all. So what I wanted to do is kind of provide an update similarly to what I did with Warren Committee this past Monday. As some of you are aware, a lot of things have been moving fairly rapidly since the fall. This timeline that I have here is kind of representative of kind of where we are now, where we kind of left off in the fall. So even before that, last May town meeting, we had a article that we're ready to do for Gow Road that we pulled back. In doing so, there was additional survey work that we're looking at doing in the fall. And with that, in the fall, I presented to the Warren Committee kind of an update or a primer for what we were looking to do at Gow Road as part of our school building project of an upper middle school. Soon after that presentation with the Warren Committee, we became aware that the Fontbonne Convent was up for sale. So, working with the town and the town administrator, we developed an RFP, and that RFP gave an avenue or a gateway for the town to enter into negotiations with Fontbonne. So Fontbonne actually responded to it in December, and we're currently working in negotiations. And the intent of that is at the February town meeting is we have an article at the Warren Committee tonight for the purchase of the Fontbonne Convent. And what that does is, in front of town meeting, there is, the first portion of this vote is getting, town meeting to approve this. In April, the cost of the Fontbonne Convent will be up on a ballot for a debt exclusion. And then as that gets approved, we would then go to a May town meeting, and we'd be using that essentially for financing for the architectural and engineering services. So there'd be another vote that comes along with that. Originally, we were trying to have Gow Road as part of this special town meeting in February too, is basically, an either or type scenario. But the survey work that was going on in the final documentations were lagging. So we didn't have time to secure those documents, make votes on them, and have it ready for February. For us, we're still proceeding on a parallel path. And as I lay out here, there's a number of things that have to happen for a Fontbonne to get approved. So what we're looking to do is have a backup plan of Gow Road on the books for May. And then basically, if Fontbonne doesn't work, we'd have that to fall back to in May. So the convent that's at Fontbonne, I never really noticed this. I had friends that went to Fontbonne. I just never even realized it was there. But it's on the side of the road next to the high school that you see in the upper left portion of the picture. It's about 45,000 square feet. It sits on 3.5 acres. There are wetlands that are like in the upper right-hand portion of this where you see the trees. It's in a residential area, and currently they have it listed for $8.5 million. So, as this presented itself to us, we had to figure out what educational program we could fit into that building because it would not fit what we were planning on Gow Road. So we had to shift a little bit, and we went back to the DRA study that was done in 2019. And the thought of an early childhood education center is kind of we went back to the books on that and started looking at that of how that would fit in. So the layout of that had about 26 classrooms, and then space wise was about 60,000 square feet or 59,000. So part of what we want to do too is the update of the enrollment in the grade configuration. So currently, the grade configurations for the district, look like this. The 4 elementary schools that feed up to a single middle school, and then the singular high school. So the proposed with an early childhood education center would be taking pre-kindergarten and kindergarten out of the elementary schools and down to an early childhood education center, and then basically freeing up space at the elementary school level. Unlike the Gow Road option, which did all levels, this was one that, again, we're trying to fit it with what we have at Fontbonne, a smaller site, but an existing building. The enrollment numbers currently, the latest numbers that we've got from NESDEC, I ran through and basically regraphed them, so we have them. The dashed line you see is the capacity within the elementary schools at 1,900. And as you can see, we're operating about 1 grade level above that capacity. So when we look at that graph and we highlight, the pre-kindergarten, kindergarten populations as part of that and take it out, which is basically what we'll be doing as part of this project, it brings us down below that capacity line. So basically that's our goal as part of this project. So it works. As as we were working in the fall, we were looking at talking about modular classrooms. And as we were looking at that and talking about it, the cost to do the modular classroom options, for a short-term solution was $7 to $8 million. So as we were looking at that and Fontbonne came up, roughly about the same cost, it made us start focusing a little bit more on that as a way to better spend the town's money. The map that I show up here is basically a plot plan of the existing area. The boundaries of it are shown in blue. The green areas that you see there are the wetlands and the wetland boundaries, like I said, that exist behind it. The interior space of the convent essentially have wings that extend out in each way. Basically, they're made up of bedrooms and rooms along the edges and a center hallway that's about 6 feet wide. So as you look down the hallway here, you can see it's a center hallway with rooms that bookend on each side. Inside the rooms, typical layouts that you're seeing here. And I present these, more to give people a view of, inside of, what we're looking at renovating. There's a TV room for the nuns here that's basically, big and wide open. We figure we can build this out for a classroom space pretty easily. And then even the chapel area, lends itself for, an auditorium or a gymnasium or just some type of bigger open space. But when we look back at those other rooms and how do we fit kindergarten classrooms in there, it takes up a majority of the hallway and the adjacent rooms. So, when we started looking at this, it's going to be a significant renovation when we actually proceed. That type of renovation through the Mass Building Code, it's basically listed as a level 3 alteration. That comes in when you modify more than 50% of the floor. And by doing so, it triggers, a number of upgrades that are required: fire protection, HVAC, accessibility, structural review for earthquake, seismic. electrical, information technology, and energy conservation. So what we've done is, as a school building committee, jointly with the school committee, is we've hired DRA Architecture. We're asking them to do a feasibility study to look at everything. Part of what they're including is a separate mechanical, electrical, plumbing team, a fire protection team, civil and structural. And basically, we're looking for them to develop conceptual educational programs, layouts, and then most importantly, an order of magnitude cost estimate. So with that, that's kind of where we're at right now. And I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions or comments from school committee? Member Ross Denny.
As usual, I just want to thank you, Sean. Like, you have pivoted from the old days where we were talking about a building and a land swap to finding a more pragmatic solution that will help us in the long term and is far more cost effective and pragmatic than modular spaces. I think it's a great opportunity for the town if we have the vision and the willingness to approve this. There was a question that I received. I wish I had this original thought. You mentioned a debt exclusion earlier. Could you explain what that means relative to an override, a building override that might be necessary to fund the renovation? But for those of us that aren't as astute to the renovation laws and costs, it would help myself as well as I'm sure the public.
Yeah, definitely. And that was actually one thing that I started looking up too, because I wasn't familiar with it, going into this. So, essentially a debt exclusion is a financing tool for the project. Essentially what it does is it only stays intact as long as the project, as long as the project is funded. So if you do a 20-year debt exclusion, after 20 years it would come off. Whereas an operational override, once you do that override, it's essentially a permanent thing ongoing. So in short, the debt exclusion expires at one point where an operational override would not expire.
Dr. Pavlicek.
Yeah, it's an old veteran of these. What it does is it takes the interest and maturing debt payment associated with the project each year and exempts it from Proposition 2.5. So it's not eating into your levy limit for Prop 2.5. Your Prop 2.5 levy limit stays where it is. This goes on top of it. So it allows the town to raise the money to do it without having to sacrifice other costs within the town to stay under the levy limit. It's what we did for the last school building project. And basically what happens is whatever the cost is that year is added to the levy limit, just enough to fund it. And then as Sean said, as you pay it off, it goes down and eventually disappears. So it is how we funded the buildings that we're in now. And that should be actually coming off in a few years as they start to roll off. There were several debt exclusions over time to fund parts of it, but as they roll off, this would be coming on.
Thank you, Dr. Pavlicek. Member White.
So just for my time frame, I was going to ask Sean and maybe Glenn to speak about this. If the select board and their representatives get an approval for the price of this convent, and then we move to warrant committee and they approve it, and then we go to town meeting, they have to approve it, and then we go to the voters and they have to approve this purchase. When might we know what the cost of renovating the building might be? When would be your sense of when we would have that proposal?
So that's part of the component we've asked DRA to do, initially to do a high level order of magnitude cost estimate. Right now we're working on doing the programmatic elements of that too. So, typically with a high level cost estimate, as quickly as we're reacting to this stuff, It's not going to be as granular as something you would find when a fully baked design is bid out. So typically what they'll do is they'll take square footage costs or historical cost data and apply it to it. So, MSBA actually publishes all their construction data for projects that are going on right now. And my guess is they'd be utilizing something like that to provide those. So timing wise, I'm hoping to have that before the town meeting.
Thank you. Dr. Carroll.
Yeah, thanks again, Sean. So I have just a couple of quick questions. I understand we're still waiting for the feasibility study back that may answer these questions, but in case you have any insights, do we have, or I guess, what's the latest sort of estimate of how many students would fit into this space? Or is that something the feasibility study will determine?
Two parts. So we're utilizing the previous space study that was done that had long-term goals that the RA did back in 2019. And based on that, there were 26 classrooms, I believe, of what they were doing. And I think our initial mix of those classrooms would be 19 of kindergarten, 7 of pre-kindergarten. Total population for what that would be doing, I have to kind of go back to the graphs that were shown before, but it's based on the current enrollment.
Okay, thanks. And this may be a premature question, but at what point would we be kind of getting input from those educators, our pre-K and kindergarten educators, as far as like how this space would need to be set up to work well from their point of view?
Yeah, good question. So, part of it is, the process to design this space that we're doing isn't going to be a 2-month process. So, our goal is once we get the funding for it, you're looking at a minimum of probably a year for design efforts that are going to go in there. So across that year is essentially where you're going to have some of those inputs. As we bring an architectural and engineering team on, an owner's project manager on, there's a lot of opportunities for integral meetings to kind of tap that, what they're looking for if they're going to be the ones operating in that space.
Okay, thanks.
I might just add to that that what the educational program is that goes into this new school building will be under the auspices of the school committee. So, that I would imagine that we and folks in the district who are involved in early childhood would be very involved in looking at what we need to have in that building. And just earlier today, I had a first conversation with a district early childhood coordinator, Bernadette Butler, and Superintendent Sheehan to talk about just this. And, we have to remember that the space needs study was done actually 4 years ago. It was January 2019 when it was completed. And the situation has changed a little bit. And we just need to be sure that we're up to date on where we stand and what our needs are. And, in terms of what a building would need to have in it. So I would expect that we would be very involved in that stage of planning for the building. Member Varghese?
Sean, thank you so much for doing this presentation. I echo Member Osteni's comments, like it has changed so much, and I appreciate you staying on top of this and really keeping us informed. I just had a couple of questions. So are the 26 classrooms that you mentioned, is that based on our current number of students that we have?
well, I believe the current number of students we have would fit within that space.
Okay.
Where we derive the number of classrooms, physical classrooms, is going back to that space study that was there. As Member Rosemary just mentioned too, that was done 4 years ago. But part of it is what I asked you before, like a little bit of relief. Is we are trying to work very quickly to respond to something that's on the open market right now. Ideally, we would have everything fully well-baked and worked ahead. But that's the nice thing of having that study back in 2019. We're using that as a baseline, as a starting point.
Okay.
And then as we move forward and get it approved, we can adjust.
Okay. And then my other question was, like, let's say everything goes forward, like, how many years would it take to actually renovate this building? Like, estimate?
My guess, it depends on how much addition we're really doing. My guess is probably about 2 years. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's a shorter timeline than what we would be doing at Gow Road.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I think if people are trying to compare the two options, Gow Road, there was a number of approvals that we'd have to do through the state and through federal level.
Right.
And then, build the entire school on there. Here, we've got a school that we're, 45,000 square feet that we're renovating to. We're adding additional space onto there, but we kind of get a head start on it.
Okay.
The other way too is we wouldn't be tied up with the additional approvals we need.
Okay. And then you just mentioned about adding on. Are we able to add on to Fontbonne if needed, if we needed to add more classrooms?
So yeah, so that's the nice thing with our school building committee. We have construction professionals. The majority of us have already walked inside the site. That's kind of where we get the pictures from. Glenn Hoffman on our committee is a local architect that did a very similar project over in South Boston. So we're fairly confident we can do that. But the reason we're hiring DRA is to have that independent voice. That somebody else outside of us is actually confirming that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Sean, and we want to be sure you can get back in the warrant committee. They're calling your name, so we'll let you go. But thank you so much for hopping out and joining us. So,
all right, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I believe that concludes our meeting. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. And somebody second that, please.
Second.
Very good. Thanks. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Varghese.
Yes.
Member White.
Yes.
Dr. Carroll.
Yes.
Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Member Ross Denny.
Yes.
And Chair Rosemary, yes. Very good. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.